Welcome to On the Chain.
I want to go ahead and play a couple clips from Brad Garlinghouse, some notable clips here. I picked out the time here, so we're just going to watch a little bit of this. But let me cue this up, and while I'm queuing this up here, there we go. Let's go.
Back to the question that is currently in the debate in the US about securities, about cryptocurrencies being securities versus commodities. Obviously, Ripple is being sued by the SEC over this very question, and I don't want to litigate the lawsuit here on stage with you. But can you talk a little bit about how you see that debate that is playing out now? Which coins should be securities? Which should be commodities? Why does it matter?
Yeah. Well, first, let's back. I agree. I don't want to relitigate it here. It's well documented. But let's back up for a moment and just, when Coinbase went public, which really wasn't that long ago, Coinbase was trading XRP. They enabled consumers and businesses, whatever, to trade XRP. The SEC had to approve their S1 such that Coinbase could go public. The SEC now seems to take the position when they sued us that, hey, XRP is a security and always has been, but they approved Coinbase going public even though Coinbase is not a registered broker-dealer. So there's some contradictions here of the SEC almost not within its own organization knowing left hand, right hand. For me, it's always been pretty clear in my mind, a security as defined by the Howey test gives you right, title, and interest and governance rights. So when Ripple does have shareholders, right? We did a Series A financing, we did a Series B financing, we did a Series C financing. Those people have right, title, and interest. They have governance rights. People who buy XRP don't participate in that framework. And so, I think it's very clear that the SEC, instead of doing the hard work to define a new set of clear rules, a new set of clear regulations, both from the SEC and really the U.S.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. But I wanted to unpack a little bit of what he said here, which I really, this is what's really great about Brad Garlinghouse. He elegantly cuts right to the chase and explains exactly why. Because the guy's like, well, there's a whole thing where I'm not going to litigate it on stage, but just tell me a little bit about what's going on with the SEC v. Ripple. And one of the things that he really jumps into and he makes the case for is the fact that, Ripple as a company has shareholders. It's a company. It had a Series A, Series B, C financing, over $300 million of financing of shareholders of venture capital. There was even some of the early investors, angel capital, that was invested in the company. People that buy XRP do not have any of that governance over the company, right? They don't have any rights or title or any of that. So he's making a really good, clear distinction on this. And this is so beautifully executed and done. And it's good for people that are attending the conference, the Collision conference, or sitting out in the audience, because they don't necessarily have this distinction. All they know is, oh, it's a security. But he's clearly defining why it's not a security. The other reason, and John Deaton made this really apparent the other day on Twitter, when he really talked about the fact that, the idea of XRP being a security, Ripple has no movement. And Ripple puts out, hey, we just signed up the largest bank in the world, or we just did this, no price movement. You know how it moves? And this is John Deaton made this point. It moves based on Bitcoin. Bitcoin slides down, and guess what's right behind it? That's right. XRP is right behind it. And guess what? So is every other coin. Every other token out there is right with it. Ethereum, Solana, you name it. They're all right there. XLM, they all took the slide. XDC, they all move on parity with whatever is going on with Bitcoin. So that's a really important point to realize, and we know this, it, because we've been around for a little bit. Even if you're new to the space, you have seen when Bitcoin moves up, it rises. That tide rises all those boats, and everything kind of just comes up with it. That's how it works. And the funny part about that is it doesn't really have any movement when it comes to Ripple itself. So let's play the next part of this with Brad.
Government in general, they've instead decided, hey, we're going to do we're doing regulation through enforcement, which is not efficient and really has, I think, stifled innovation in the United States.
But wouldn't you say it's reasonable? They see things that are going, things that are exploding. Some people are being scammed. I mean, of course, they're going to try and enforce when they can.
Well, as we talked about earlier, there's other regulators. I mean, Gary Gensler, the chair of the SEC, has been prone to say the crypto is the Wild West. I mean, I don't know what he means by it. I mean, Ripple as a company is regulated both in the United States and other global regulators in a whole bunch of different ways. So I don't think it's the Wild West at all. I think crypto certainly is a volatile asset class, but it's also worth noting that from the NASDAQ composite hit a peak right before COVID and then was down 55% after COVID. And by comparison, crypto's down maybe 65%. All asset classes have a certain volatility. I don't think it's a regulator's job to determine how that volatility should be, accessed by.
Right there. That's perfect right there. And it's not the job of a regulator. It's never been the job of government to pick winners and losers. That's never been the case. I mean, it's not supposed to be the case, right? The government is supposed to be impartial. And now you have the government picking winners and losers. And we'll get into another token that we have another brilliant mind in our community that raised a great point that I want to jump into. And the whole idea, if you think about this, the whole idea of the government stepping in here. Now, one thing that I did disagree with Brad on is talking about when he said, I get the whole regulation by enforcement, but he later corrected himself. So as he started going on that road saying that the SEC could go out there and should be more focused on making a clear cut path, rules of the road, so to speak. But then he said, well, yeah, he brought it back to, he didn't say Congress, but he said, but really the government at large, really that's up to their job. And really the SEC only can enforce what laws are already on the books. This goes for the CFTC as well. And any of the government agencies that do enforcement, that's really all they can do. They can enforce what's there. So his point is well taken that if the rules of the road are a little bit on the muddy side, don't make a lot of sense, then how are you going to go ahead and enforcement? That's a really strong point right there.
By consumers, by businesses, what have you.
Right. It seems as if, tell me what you think of this. The crypto, there was a discussion in our crypto tokens, securities or commodities. Should they maybe just be a third thing? I mean, they perform such different functions from traditional commodities or securities in many ways that are we getting bogged down by talking in these old style categories?
I think that is a perfectly plausible solution. I'm not really one to go out and say, hey, we need more regulators and let's create a new entity. It shouldn't be the CFTC or the SEC or Treasury. We should have a new regulator. But I willingly admit to me it clearly doesn't fit in the securities bucket. Does it fit perfectly as a currency? Well, some of them I think very clearly are first and foremost currencies. Some of them are more commodities. Some of them have other features. So sure, maybe we should have that. I don't know that we want to create more regulatory overhead in the United States than where we are today.
Right.
And by the way, I'll go back to the United States is way behind other G20 countries. So in other countries have figured out how to make this work in a way that they feel is protecting consumers, making sure that there are orderly markets, making sure they're not fraudulent activity. It's not actually as hard as I think the United States has made it seem.
So why?
Yeah, he's right on about that. It is really not that hard. And the funny part about it is in the early days when you had governments and obviously crypto was new and all these governments around the world were like, well, what do we do? And the first one to come out with some regulatory framework around it, when you're number one and you're first, you're going to make some mistakes. You might say, you might put some legislation out there, pass something that isn't really probably the most efficient. But when you have Singapore and Switzerland and Australia, you have all these countries, especially what's happening mostly in Asia, but even in the UK, passing legislation, well, it's not so hard anymore for the US because you can kind of pick and choose. You say like, well, in the UK, they look at it as it could be a currency, it could have a utility, and it could also be a security, or it could be all three. It could actually be one or two. And I actually like that framework the best, or I think it's one of the stronger ones. But again, the whole idea of being first and trying to figure it out and what's the best legislation to put forward, it's already been figured out by pretty much the entire world. The only one that hasn't figured it out, that's right, the good old US of A. I mean, can't figure it out. I don't know why, but they just can't figure it out. There's just a lot of turmoil going on with government right now and with Congress. And I also think priorities. I think sometimes what happens is that well, I'm going to say sometimes, let's say it happens in every country, is that you have politicians who are supposed to represent we, the people. And what they forget after a month or 6 months or a year or however long of being someplace, they actually forget about us. And they start getting into their own headspace and start thinking about what would be the best versus listening to the people and what they want. And when they get calls to their offices and people reach out and they say, hey, this is really important to me, they just kind of go on their merry way. And this is what's happened in the United States, where you have a lot of people who are making these phone calls. And John Deaton, when he launched on his website on crypto law, and you see that how many thousands have connected with Congress. I believe almost every person in Congress in both the House of Representatives and the Senate have been contacted. And what do we have? Well, we just have we don't have any more better solutions there. It just almost seems to get weirder and absolutely weirder.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.